Into news and views with myself, Salailo Makwediri. We are well and truly into the second hour of the show, and we're going to be kickstarting the second hour with, I think, a very, very important conversation when it comes to conversations about South Africa's energy crisis. There's always one name that strikes fear and frustration into the hearts of millions in this country: Eskom. The utility that has for years been synonymous with load shedding, sky high bills, and national economic strain. But now Eskom has announced it has spent, I think, a staggering 5.26 billion on diesel fuel to power its open cycle gas turbines this financial year. A rather costly effort to keep the lights on as electricity demand crisis continues throughout this winter period. And this spending comes amid assurances that load shedding continues to remain suspended. But questions linger about the sustainability, the cost of keeping the lights on, and ultimately, what does this mean for ordinary South Africans already burdened by energy insecurity? 5.26 billion on diesel just to avoid load shedding. Damn. To help us make sense of Eskom's latest moves and whether this diesel binge, if we can call it that, is a smart stopgap or a ticking fiscal time bomb, as many would consider. We now speak with energy expert and CEO of Sinan Energy, Mohamed Madhi. Mohamed, Jazakallah so much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum. Really appreciate you having you on Salam Media.
Wa alaikum salam, and salam to all the listeners as well.
I think we can kickstart the conversation with that figure. Eskom's diesel spent of over 5 billion. I think it was jaw dropping when I read that article. How sustainable is it relying on diesel powered turbines as a way to keep the lights on to avoid load shedding?
Technically and financially, it's not feasible in either case. Let's just look at it technically first. The open cycle gas turbines were never meant to be running 24/7 or for an extended period of time continuously. They're not designed that way, they're not built that way. They are meant to be peaking plants, and they're meant to be providing power either during peak times or continuous power for a certain period of time, not continuously, indefinitely. So technically, that creates a problem of its own. It also means that those gas turbines, which are now running on diesel, of course, are susceptible to some sort of failure themselves because they are being pushed beyond their design limits and they are being operated outside of their design limits. So there is a major risk there. When we look at the financial side, of course, this is not the first year Eskom has been doing this. They've been doing this for several years now. And we've already seen the result in consumers' pockets. One of the reasons we have the high tariff increases that we do, and I mean, this year, the tariff increase was 12.74%, which is, more than double the inflation rate. And the reason for this is Eskom's cost base. And part of that cost base is, of course, the major diesel cost that Eskom has running those open cycle gas turbines. So we've already felt it. We will continue to feel it. And, there isn't any end in sight in the next couple of years in terms of running those open cycle gas turbines. However, I think what we should keep in mind, the alternative, unfortunately, is much worse. And that is not running the open cycle gas turbines, having load shedding, and the impact on the economy is even more devastating. So it's almost like choosing between the lesser of two evils, with load shedding being far more devastating to the economy and to individuals and small businesses, etc.
I think one thing that was really interesting for me is the fact that Eskom says this diesel usage is within their budget, and they also expect it to decline as more generation units come back online. From what you know and from your understanding, this is your industry. You know a bit more than an ordinary South African would. How realistic is this optimistic outlook from Eskom?
I think, as a former power station engineer myself, and having been in the industry and still am in the industry, I think Eskom keeps making the same mistake. And that is assuming that once they have fixed one set of problems, there are going to be no further problems, or unlikely to be the kind of problems they've had in the past. Now, we have to say that they have done a more intensive program of maintenance over the last couple of years, and that has improved the overall performance of the generation fleet. However, the age of the fleet and still the backlog in many aspects of that maintenance means that that fleet, any one of those power stations in the fleet, can go down now or in the future. And I don't think that has been adequately planned for. And that is always, a shortfall in terms of Eskom's long-term planning. And so we are exposed as a country, as a nation, as consumers, as businesses, to the vagaries of what may or may not happen to Eskom's generation fleet.
Hmm, hmm. Very important. And speaking of generation fleet, the unplanned outages, from what I've heard, and the figures that have been released by Eskom is they're averaging over around 13,000 megawatts above the base case. Eskom predicts, they are around that figure. Does that signal, being a bit closer to load shedding returning, those unplanned outages potentially coming back, return of load shedding?
It could. I think no one can say definitively, and certainly the unplanned outages are on the higher end. If you look at international benchmarks, if you look at the norms, it's definitely very high what we have in this country. I don't think we at the point where we're gonna have the kind of load shedding we've had, say 2 years ago, or in March 2023. But there are certainly you know aspects or scenarios where we could have some load shedding returning over the high use period. So we look at the end of winter, we look at midsummer, those times of the year, even change of season. It is possible that we could have some load shedding.
Mm, mm. And finally, just before I let you go, I think the one point of pain for a lot of South Africans has been the high electricity prices. I think the increase has been staggering. Can South Africans expect relief anytime soon, or should people just brace themselves for more of the same high costs and unreliable power? Should people consider even further the alternatives that we've seen, taking place during the peak of load shedding? We've seen more people, get, the solar alternative and other ways to kind of generate and mitigate the high cost of electricity in the country.
I think that's a great question. And irrespective of whether there's load shedding or not, what we should be aware of as consumers, as businesses in this country, is that the cost of alternatives continue to drop, whereas Eskom's prices continue to rise. And that crossover point has already been reached where alternatives are cheaper than Eskom prices, even when there's no load shedding. So
Mm,
having a solar plant and having battery energy storage and having that combination provides you with cheaper power than Eskom can provide you. And many companies and individuals have already done this. As a country, we've installed about 5,000 megawatts of solar behind the meter, or as private offtake. So that's a very significant chunk. And I think that trend needs to continue. And what we need to do is lobby government to continue providing the incentives to make that even more attractive and more easy for people to install solar and battery energy storage.
I think we're going to do on that note. Mohammed, always a pleasure having you on Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us the time, and hope we chat again. Hopefully, it won't be about load shedding.
Hopefully.
That is Mohamed Madhi, CEO of Sinan Energy. And yeah, Eskom burning through 5.26 billion to keep the lights on. Ultimately, that trickles down to you. That trickles down to you paying a bit extra for your electricity than you'd ordinarily would. Have you started seeing the spike in electricity prices? I definitely have. Are there alternatives that you've put into place to kind of mitigate that price increase? Do you have solar that you maybe put up, as a way to kind of stop the over reliance on Eskom? What are you doing? Are you switching off the geyser at night? Are you not switching on the heater? It's winter now, it's really cold. Are you maybe choosing a gas alternative? I've seen a lot of people going the gas route because electricity has become that expensive. I think you can engage with us. You can share some tips with our listeners of how you cutting down on the electricity spike and the prices and the units that are so little, man. So little. 1,000 rand gets you, I don't know, so little electricity. Like it's really mind boggling. You can share with us your tips, how you mitigating the surge in electricity prices, which is ultimately one of the reasons that's causing it is Eskom spending almost 5 billion to make sure that they use the diesel turbines and spending so much, and it trickles down to you. So you are paying more to avoid load shedding. WhatsApp line is 0617660355, or you can call us on 01168000355. What are you doing to cut down electricity usage? What alternatives have you put in place in your home to make sure that you don't pay as much? I think it's very important that we share tips. The economy is really bad, and I think everyone is just trying to find a hack, of some sort to survive Ramaphosa's economy, as many have coined it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, news and views continues.